Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, science or study of fake lie or imagination. Now, Sattology builds your identity and mythology destroys your identity. I have a very, very special guest, and we are again going to stick on an academic topic of sanctions. So, we have discussed that in the past, and I was the first one to say American sanctions hurt Americans more than anybody else in the world today because the world is disconnected. So people used to talk about the global economy. It's never global, it's always the local, always the local. And so strengthening the local economy works the best for in everybody's interest. So I have very special guest, very, very special guest, Sumeet Mehta. Welcome, Sumeet Mehta from Mumbai.
Thank you very much, Aditya ji.
So Mumbai is the financial capital of the world. And I was reading some statistics that the city of Mumbai controls 30% of African economical trade. I mean, is that a true statement? But this is a published report that they are the one small city, and that too just the South Bombay, controls or has influence over 30% of entire African trade. What do you have to say on that? Let me begin with that. Did you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, uh, come again, please.
So I was saying that the just the city of Mumbai controls 30% of the African trade, completely African trade, entire African continent trade.
Oh, well, I wouldn't be sure about the statistics, but yes, I know at least more than a dozen friends who are right now sitting in Africa, and they are all like two of them are based in one of the suburbs on outskirts of Bombay. And I know quite a few people who travel regularly. Rather, one of my clients was one of the active businessmen working on India-Kenya trade. So anything from sourcing of lentils to sourcing of food grains to cashew nuts, a lot of activities. So I think first, the typical mercantile attitude of the people in Bombay, be it across communities. I'm not naming one community, but it is across multiple communities. And their ability to trade across multiple countries, multiple continents is something which is worth appreciating. Rather, the most important example that we can quote here is who got Vasco da Gama to India. It was a Gujarati sailor, a trader who had his own ships, and his name was also Krishna. He was at the Cape of Good Hope, and he was coming and he provided directions. Rather, his ships were much larger than Vasco da Gama's ship, which was then said to be one of the largest ships in Europe. And with them, he came down to the coast of Malabar, and from there, he understood the direction of coming to India. So, Indians have been global traders since I can say it would be an audacious statement, but since the Indus Valley civilization time, because we have seen Indus Valley civilizations, uh, archaeological findings that we had connections with Egypt and everything since then. So, I think that is in the blood of Indians.
No, even during the time of Ramayana also, Treta Yuga, we are talking about much millions of years back. Even during the Ramayana period, also, we hear that Ayodhya was beaming with traders from all over the world, traders and warriors from all over the world. So the whole thing of see European the Europeanism means that like everything centered around Europe because they discovered something, they have the best faith. These are all colonial lines just to attract others. I call Europeans as the best salesman for everything. Now, coming to the today's world, now they have invented a new thing called sanctions, like punishing people on the basis of leverages. Now, leverages like trade. Trade is one of the biggest leverages. Now, we both discussed this topic 2 3 times already. We have done it, and everything has come true from our discussions. Everything that is the biggest impact of American sanctions or European sanctions will be on them, not on others. So, just to give an example, Mexico has a cheaper gas means petrol, is cheaper gas than North America or Canada or Europe. And they're just south of the border. And today, most Americans are running to live in Mexico. Third world country, according to them, they're going to live there because they feel they can live their life. And so, what do you say with all that has happened on sanctions? So, what do you say about the sanctions diplomacy? The leverage diplomacy used by the West against the trade.
I think the only reason why America had control over the global trade or the control over the ability to influence countries or pull down countries according to its own wishes was that they controlled SWIFT. They controlled the banking operations and the movement of money. Now that is failing in the current regime due to multiple reasons. First thing is there is an emergence of trade blocks. We saw BRICS as one of the trade bloc. We are seeing China entering into relations with multiple countries. We are seeing India entering into relations with Russia, with Iran. Now we are talking to Brazil as well. Now what happens in that kind of scenario is that the hegemony of dollar is ending. Today, if America thinks that it can impose sanctions, what happens? It is their institutions who are operating within the framework of dollar denominated trade, operating through SWIFT or getting transferred to SWIFT through SWIFT, that is hurt. Look at Germany. Now Germany is crying that if Russia is not supplying us gas, then that is a warfare. That is a covert warfare. We are seeing the highest inflation in Germany since 1949. Imagine why? Because of unavailability of gas on one side and the unavailability of wheat and other food products on the other side, which they were totally dependent upon. And why they first thing is they impose sanctions and now Russia is not ready to supply. In this kind of situation, I feel that America's work is not happening anymore. Russia is operating through transacting using uh, cryptocurrency, especially Ethereum. How much transactions are happening in Ethereum and the money is flowing across? I think we don't have a number on that as of now, because a lot of transactions would not be even captured in the overall volumes, and value cannot be captured easily. Look at India. India has entered into a relationship with Russia. We are getting gas at crude oil, especially the Ural crude, at a 35% discount to the market, $35 discount to the market. That is first thing. Now we are also the largest importers of Russian coal. So, and very importantly, Aditya ji, all these transactions are happening in rupee, INR denominated transactions. Earlier, there was a discussion of rupee ruble swap. Now, rupee ruble swap is also out and it is a pure rupee based transaction. Similarly, we have been dealing with Iran for a very long time with rupee account, payments to Iran being routed through Union Bank of India, and at the same time supplying them with all the food and other commodities. And not just that we bought the light, sweet Iranian crude, but we are also importing pistachios and other things from Iran. Now, howsoever America tries, except for the countries who comply with them due to various pressures, I don't think anybody is able to get control in this kind of regime that America is working in. So sanctions are not working. And people who are still looking at buying Russian crude, they will use either Ethereum, they will use some other country to buy oil or gas. Gas is not possible, but at least oil they can use these kind of routes. So sanctions are a failure anymore in a multi-currency, multi uh, modal approach to transfer of money. I think sanctions are failing.
In my first article I wrote in Sunday Guardian that the American sanctions will hurt Americans more. And now the gas prices in America are reaching $10, almost $10.
$10.
$10 a gallon. So which is in way more expensive than India. So when I saw in India people crying about the gas prices, petrol prices per liter, I said I'm just shocked that why it is so low in India. And the Indians were complaining that, and so I was just a little bit shocked. So I think the Indian government has managed pretty well as compared to the global prices, where
Exactly.
India is not a producer of the gas. So why there is so much criticism then? Unnecessary criticism.
I think first thing is this criticism is largely political. Point number one. Rather, we saw a reduction in the taxes on gas, the levies on gas. We have petrol and diesel, which is the equivalent of gasoline in US, and very importantly, government reduced the tax rate so that the final impact of rising crude product prices doesn't get transmitted into higher inflation. But we have to see that over a long period, if we have to look at the strategy of the government is doing two things. First thing is by keeping gasoline prices high, government is also along with that working on blended fuel, which is ethanol. Ethanol is manufactured from sugarcane molasses. That is the first thing. Second thing is the high crude oil price and the high gas prices will impact the demand for electric vehicles, and that will reduce the demand for fossil fuel driven vehicles. That is the petrol and diesel driven vehicles. So this is something which is a two-pronged strategy to make India more dependent on its own fuel sources by keeping oil gas prices high. But recently, due to the political problems as well as the inflationary pressures that we had due to the imported inflation, we had to reduce the tax rates on petrol and diesel. That is one thing. At the same time, second thing is we have to see that where is the money going. India spent around 90 trillion rupees, 90 trillion rupees on development in the last 8 years, compared to 45 trillion rupees in the previous 10 years from 2004 to 2014 when Congress led UPA was ruling India. So, nearly in 8 years, the amount spent is more than nearly double of what was spent in the previous decade. So where does the money come from? Where do all these highways get built? And we have one of the largest food security scheme or the food subsidy scheme for the farmers, for food security scheme for the poor people, where you get rice and wheat for as low as 2 rupees. 2 rupees is how much? I think less than 20 cents or less than that. We give 1 kg of government gives 1 kg of food grain, and people get it for the whole family. So it is 8 to 10 kgs per month. That kind of so highly subsidized food grains were available, and not just in the regular course, but it helped a larger bracket of people even during the pandemic when there was a lockdown. So money is coming from taxes and it is getting used in providing food security. It is used in building infrastructure. It is used in building defense capabilities, in providing boost to industrial development in the country. All those things are happening simultaneously. If the tax revenues go down, then all those things are also affected. So government used the money. It had raised a higher tax, and it was used positively for the development of the country. The trickle down impact of the investment in capital sector, capex, was huge. Rather, we have seen this kind of growth coming only from that. Aditya.
For the first time, for most of the Indians who do not know, the gas prices per liter is higher in USA in most states. Interiors also, like I just give you an example, that the 3.89 liter in India, in US, in interiors of US, I'm talking about main cities, interiors, is almost $10, 800 rupees. So just divide. It's almost like people are paying 300 rupees a liter, some places. Not all the places, some places. Average price in the US is $5 per gallon, which is again, if you divide, is around 1.67 per liter, around 1.67 to 1.5, which you can calculate how much it is. And anyone can calculate with the current prices of the US exchange. Now, coming to Russia economy, and I'm just seeing I do study the economic indicators more than the political indicators because numbers never lie. And if you look at the dollar versus ruble, ruble is the strongest ever in the history of ruble because they disconnected that with the US dollar. Now completely disconnected. And there was, if you recall, in 90s, there was demand of full convertibility of the rupee. If Indian rupee was fully convertible today, what will be the price of Indian rupee today? You can just guess. because they are just increasing interest rates. They've increased 1.25 basis points, the highest ever in last 50 years. People are just saying 0.75. I'm saying you also calculate the last one, zero point 0.5, and you're an economics person. 1.75, 1.25% is what they've raised up just to create the artificial strength of the dollar. But what is happening is the American exports are getting expensive. So they have to import more now. So now people who were thinking Americans as, I respect Americans. They're the most innovative people in the world. They know how to innovate in difficult circumstances. I can say that very safely. I can say that. Now, what do you see the future of Indian economy with the Atmanirbhar in small areas also, other than defense also? What do you see the future of India as compared to the world?
See, Atmanirbhar or self-dependent or independent economy is something that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been working on. That started with various sectors, including defense, where we are now largely dependent on domestic manufacturing. And even when we are looking at importing certain foreign made products, say France made Rafale, we are asking them to make it in India or at least source part of major chunk of the raw material from India in what is called as the offset contracts. Okay, now that is first part. Beyond defense, what is important in the current era where we are largely interconnected is being a valuable part and a cost competitive part of the global value chain. America had shifted its manufacturing capabilities to China since 1971 after Kissinger's successful visit to Beijing. We all know about that very famous visit and followed by Nixon's visit. Now, America outsourced all its manufacturing to China, and then probably America was right in thinking that it would be an exporter of services, value-added products, high-tech products, defense equipments, and as a financial capital of the world, it could sustain itself. But somewhere the things have gone wrong, and we have realized that with America coming out with EB1 or EB5 schemes, wherein even somebody who wants to put in a cafe who can recruit 5, 10, 15 people are getting a permanent residency. So America hurt its own manufacturing capability more than hurting the manufacturing capability. It created joblessness for the unskilled labor. Everybody cannot be a Wall Street investment banker or a scientist with some, large pharma company or a large or a professor in a uh, Ivy League institution or a successful startup in Silicon Valley. They need lower end jobs as well. And for that, people are there, but you need to create jobs. That is where America went wrong in the first place. That is one of the reasons why America is facing this problem today. Second, here India will have to learn from China. India will have to understand that country has to be cost efficient and quality conscious. We in certain places, I will be criticizing India at this moment when I say this, but intention is of course from the heart. I mean that India should develop a group of some 17 Chinese companies came down to Bombay and they saw the environment in Bombay, the bureaucracy, the problems created by them, the interactions, and they prefer to go down to Vietnam instead of establishing their industries in Bombay. And this has happened in one of the major events in one of the organized by one of the major trade chambers in India, in Bombay itself, where the government official was given this feedback that please change the regulations. If India has to learn something and really become Atmanirbhar or self-dependent or independent in a way, it will have to change the structure of bureaucracy, the administration, need for administrative reforms, so that the permissions become quick, faster, red tapeism is reduced, the rent-seeking approach of the bureaucracy is curtailed heavily, and setting up an industry in India becomes easy, quick, and cost efficient. This is something which is required for India to be progressive. And if that happens, then I think India can support half of the world in terms of providing services and goods.
See, most of the Indian innovation, my you know my background, so and I can comment on that freely because I have myself deal with it. So most of the Indian innovation comes from copying Western ideas or bringing Western ideas into India. Classical example of Tata Group. Tata Group brought Starbucks. Tata Group brought so many other companies into India, and they engage into tie-up for selling. Like Marks and Spencers was also brought in by Tatas. We all know that, and then
Even
gradually
IBM was brought in by Tata's.
Tatas. So that was the major mode of revenues, like selling American products or services in India, and that's how even McDonald's, we know how they came to India through Indians, this thing. But now the landscape is changing. But still, India doesn't have their own data centers. They don't have the app stores. App stores are controlled by the Americans. So major part of the revenue goes, or visibility goes, through them. Social media platforms not in India. And so the major part of the sanctions was depriving Russia of access to American social media platforms to an extent of Google Apps and Microsoft Word, to that extent. So Microsoft Word is also not accessible in Russia, and I don't think so Russian economy has stopped because of that. But if that were to happen to India, then what will happen?
Very interesting question. Rather, the way GPay stopped working in Russia when the sanctions were imposed. I was discussing this thing with another friend of mine that what can be the impact? Look at Word, Excel, PowerPoint. We are heavily dependent on that. We are heavily dependent on Google Chrome. We are heavily dependent on GPay. Of course, we are now replacing GPay with our own payment system, which is UPI, Unified Payments Interface, and which is going global. And I think in the next 5, 7, 10 years, UPI will be a global platform which can be operated across the world. However, we need to come out with alternatives for this. As about apps, I think I'm aware about Reliance Geo working on creating a whole ecosystem of its own on the Reliance platform. So they have got good amount of foreign investment in, including the major venture capital firms from Silicon Valley, who have invested in Reliance Geo, that is Geo Platforms Limited, and they are working on creating a whole ecosystem of startups who would like to make various kind of apps, as well as Reliance will itself invest in some startups for say live streaming of content, creation of content, and those kind of things which will be available on their own geo platform. So they will have their own geo app store kind of thing which will come in the next few years, and they are investing heavily on that area. So that is one area where I am satisfied that things are going to look up. As about others that you have said, we need to have our own spreadsheet software or our own word processor or own presentation maker. Some all those things we'll have to work on. How far it has started, I'm not sure about it right now. But that is the need of the hour. As about payments, I'm not worried because people have multiple payments. So they have a GPay, but they also have NPCI, that is the National Payments Corporation of India. So they have a NPCI ka UPI ID as well. So which are linked with their bank account. So if GPay stops working in India, God forbid tomorrow, if America decides to impose a sanction on India, then our payments will not stop. We will be operating through Beam. We will be operating through the banks apps as well. So we are not worried about that. But yes, on the other part, there is a need to do something.
That is the major, parts of the sanctions, because the sanctions, they work, the entire financial industry works on Excel sheet, not on any software. I was shocked that even the Bank of New York Mellon or Bank of America, the Excel sheet is the number one thing is kept by the analysts. They built the models on Excel sheet, and even the Google spreadsheet doesn't work there. Is the app
The real
Microsoft.
concern is the Microsoft 365, which is people pay for that on an annual basis. But again, Indians are very innovative. You have lived in Bombay, so you know how the right word in the Bombay slang or the jargon dictionary is jugaad. So people have access to pirated Excel, Word, and everything. So it will work to some extent. How much it will work will be a real concern.
the one of the things is like when you are, and that is a concern for Americans also, because as the economy goes down, the spending power goes down, then the most of these American corporations are going to shift to India, most probably, because India is their home. I mean, the majority of the 80 to 90% workforce, these products are developed in India, in Bangalore, right there, it is there. And it might be impossible to put those sanctions on India, might be impossible, but nothing is ruled out. We have seen this, nothing is ruled out, including India's $600 billion foreign reserves, not ruled out. And this must be a big, it's a very small change for Americans, but Americans use that to lend that money to their own people. And with the interest going up, that means the less world is buying American dollar based ADRs. And so, what do you think? Like the spend economy has failed to some extent, and the balance of Artha Shastra is coming in. Like Chanakya says, there has to be balance, and the state must be able to the people must be able to trade locally. And there was no national currency in Mahabharata time. Even though Nishk was the official currency of Yudhishthir and even Sri Ramchandra, Nishk was the official currency, but still there was local barter trades were considered even more important during that time. During that time also, so the currency based system has been existing in the world since Treta Yuga, not just few thousand years back, or the West introduced it or India introduced it again, but it's all mentioned in is document well documented in our scriptures also. So, so do you think a balance of economic strategy is needed now? Because pure capitalism has failed, pure communism has failed. So only thing remaining is, yeah.
Pure capitalism and pure communism were bound to fail. Rather, you look at what is the capitalism model, the pre-World War II or pre-World War II and the post-World War II capitalism model. The pre-World War II model was the model of imperialism and colonialism, whereas the post-World War II model was more of a US-driven world order, wherein the industries were based in a few countries and the natural resources of many smaller countries, be it India, be it many countries across Africa or Latin America, they were exploited, they were brought around in Europe and US, and they were manufactured over there. Of course, Japan also benefited out of it, Korea benefited out of it, because they also set up their plants accordingly without having raw material. So look at POSCO, look at Nippon Steel. They are equivalents of the US Steel. Raw material was brought in from Africa, from other places, be it coal, be it iron ore, be it even dolomite for that matter, and steel was manufactured. Now, when we go back to Chanakya's time, I would say that Chanakya was a bigger socialist or a communist than uh, Karl Marx himself. But at the same time, he promoted fair trade as well as entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is different from capitalism. Entrepreneurship is where we built up the capability to explore markets, to create markets and win those markets, or have a dominance over those markets through fair means. Whereas in capitalism, they use the state to promote the trade. Be it British East India Company, who used the state to promote the trade, destroyed the cotton trade in India and the textiles in India, especially the Dhaka textiles and everything, so that the textile mills in London and Manchester could survive or thrive. America has done the same thing. Be it the easiest ways, cheap crude on which the whole economy was running. Now, Chanakya, I will give you one example. Chanakya very clearly said that no material, raw material can leave the state or the village or the province without further processing. So the place of origin also created employment for the people, and there was skilled employment for the people in that particular region, in that particular village or the town or the region or the city. Cities were largely mercantile, but the surrounding areas were where manufacturing used to happen. So we will see a new order, if in case that happens. I will call it the Dharmic world order, where we can see that countries like Africa, countries like India, the countries like those in Latin America, Southeast Asia, they can flourish on the basis of industries coming in their countries, their regions, driven by the natural resources they have, which they have been blessed or endowed by the Almighty, and skills being developed for the people so that people can also grow. Today, Africa has so much of natural resources. World's best minerals are available over there. And then too, we see the people being most maximum poverty is in Africa. Why? Because they are not, no employment is created for them. This is against the idea of whatever Chanakya said. Chanakya had also said that land can never be given. Now, this is the same idea that Marxists talk about, that land is should be owned by the sovereign. Chanakya was the first to state that 2,500 years ago. And what did he say? That land can be allotted for that particular purpose. If the purpose ends, then the land has to be given back. Or if you stop doing that particular work, the land has to be given back to the government or the state or the sovereign. This thing has changed. Today, when allotments happen of land, 99 years lease or whatever, after a few years, the factories close down, or few decades, factories close down, and it turns into real estate game. And who benefits out of it? Not the state. So somewhere I think the need for a dharmic capitalism, or we can say dharmic entrepreneurship driven economy, is something which is required. And with the kind of wealth accumulation in a very selfish and exploitative manner, Western capitalism has got a very bad name. We never had that in India. India was one of the, rather we can call it Bharat, was one of the most prosperous countries. Before Mughals invaded India, India's share was 28% of the global GDP. How can that happen? We used to export so many products used to come into India. We have excavations where we have found gold coins and other currencies of various other countries in India. And these are all archaeological findings. We have records of that. Now, what does that mean? That we created a right kind of environment where poverty was ensured, that there are no people who are willfully kept poor. I was reading Arthashastra and I came across an example in the commentaries that there was a potter. That potter in the Indo-Gangetic Plain region, he owned around 8 to 9 large ships to transport his pots from one city to the other city using Ganges. Now that was the kind of prosperity in India, where potter, who is now, as per the current post-colonial definition, is considered to be a lower caste person or a Shudra, was a person who used to have so much of wealth that he used to manufacture on that scale and transport using ships. That never happened in the in the post-industrialization era in Europe as well, where a small person making these kind of things could grow to that extent. I would like to highlight one more thing here, is the importance of the word Shreni. Outside India, I'm sure people wouldn't know what is Shreni, but Shrenis were the trade guilds of those era. And there is a mention of Shrenis in Chanakya, in Arthashastra, of how to deal with them. And there are evidences of that, of Shrenis involving in, so there were various artisans and traders guilds across India in multiple states or kingdoms. And they all used to liaise with the government and work with the government and with the people. And they are also one of the largest benefitors or the donors for various schools, universities of that era, temples, through which a lot of service could be provided to the people. So, there was a collective conscience in that era that money comes, money has to be earned, wealth has to be created, people should live an excellent lifestyle, where, like, if you see that Indian cotton cloth of that era was one of the most costliest products. Pearls, diamonds, precious stones, gold. People used to have it, and there are stories across that people had, the pearl necklace of these many pearls, or diamonds, so many costly diamonds and everything. But at the same time, there was a conscience in the people that the money is not only for myself, but it is also for the society. Because of this particular mindset, it came to us that there was no need for a communist kind of mindset in India, that government should intervene, because people voluntarily used to help others. There was a system of that sort. So, I think we need a new dharmic world order and a dharmic entrepreneurship based wealth creation model, which is not selfish, but it is selfless. Aditya.
Every single powerful country has exported an idea. We have not exported it. We are not even confident of telling our story to the others. We say it amongst ourselves. You and I are talking, but probably from this show, it reaches the mainstream Western audience. We never tell others what to do. We think that others will understand. But there is a saying in US: the duck which quacks the loudest gets the cracker. And
We
that's
have
the
that saying in Gujarati also, that the trader, shopkeeper who screams the loudest is able to sell his wares. So what you said is right. That till we don't explain our concepts, the Indic concepts or the Dharmic concepts, to the world, people will not understand.
See, Vishwaguru is a political topic, is a political slogan. I don't take it seriously because no intelligent person would like to become a guru. No intelligent person. Because the most intelligent person would like to be a student. That's a traditional way. Like from Vidya comes Vinamrata. You do not become arrogant and boastful after getting Vidya because that is nobody appreciates it. There's another American saying, no one likes a smart ass. And that's a secret to many people who are watching in the studio right now, and live they're watching, that the people respect expertise, but humility more than anything else. The best salesman is often the quietest one, who is a listener. And when we talk about Vishwaguru, it is self-boasting our confidence, not others. Not others. See, you need a buyer. If you're just telling that yes, buyers are going to look at the value of the wares that you sell. Very common thing. Now, so our acharyas never said that, Vishwaguru. They said we want to be the Vishwa Sevak. And that is a better point to tell others. We want to be the servant of the world. Servant is not a bad quality even, because I'm not talking dasatva. That is a different concept in Mahabharata, where Duryodhan was imposing dasatva, means taking away the freedom of Pandavas. But here, when we talk about the servant leadership, again, we are talking about as a sevak, we are going there. Every single guru claims to be a student, every single guru in the world. Now, genuine ones, I'm saying, not the others you're saying. So now we have not sold anything to anyone. We are not telling others what is best. We are just trying to prove others that within your system I have worked so well. Into the West, you're saying whatever system you gave us, we did well in that. America is exporting democracy, and we all know that democracy is exported to exploit the countries. Because the moment you have democracy exported, the intelligence agencies infiltrate the opposition parties and the mainstream parties and carry out the work of the West. It has happened throughout the history of India.
Aditya ji, I would just like to say that thank God there is no oil on Moon or on Mars or Jupiter. Once NASA finds oil, then probably we'll see US Marines on Moon and Jupiter to save the democracy in Moon and Jupiter. I don't know what living beings are there, but at least Americans will be there to save democracy.
Our Mahabharata Ramayana, a very accurate description of Moon and other planets, very accurate. And believe me, I mean, I don't want to burst the bubble of many people. Nobody will be able to exploit Moon or other planets. No, they cannot, because there is a limit put over there. There are some people who are protecting it. Now, it's not going to happen. But still, I mean, they might find thorium, because of thorium and uranium within the Earth resources. This is like we are emptying the bowels of the Earth by extracting oil, and then there is no way to replenish it. So we are creating an unstable civilization. There are black holes within the Earth. They're like a sinkholes, they call them sinkholes. They are appearing from nowhere in South America. And there is no bottom. It's a bottomless pit. Just goes in and goes to 1,000 miles down or 1,000 kilometers down. We don't even know where it goes. So my point is that we are not exporting Lokatantra. We are not exporting the values of Sanatan Dharma. We are not exporting officially. Whatever Sanatan Dharma you and I are talking is just personal. It's not an official Indian government stance. But the rest of the world is exporting their religious side and their ideas coming from biblical mythology. So what do you have to say on this?
See, I believe that whatever goes naturally, organically, is much more easier and adaptable. Now, look at whatever India is doing or the Hindus are doing in US. Take for instance, Steve Jobs has been talking highly, has talked very highly about ISKCON. Now, there are two things. One thing is, what is the kind of values you provide? What are the values that you teach, that you spread, that you ask people to follow? And second, and the most important thing is, what is it that you impose? A free flowing system, I would call it an open source, where the community is not under the pressure of some clergy or some temporal authority who will decide what you have to do, is much more easier to live in. And that is the freedom that India offers, or the Indic religions offer, Hinduism for that matter. And that is something which really needs to be understood. It cannot be explained. People need to understand it. Why do we see so many Krishna bhaktas across in Europe? Why ISKCON is growing over there? Government is not at all involved. People are not at all involved. Half 90% of the people in India don't even care or don't even know what is happening. And we get to know that okay, so and so things are happening in US. It is happening across in Europe, even Eastern Europe for that matter. Why does it happen? Because people want to experience that what is the spiritual path where you can get peace. If there is a religion which says that okay, you have to keep on fighting, you have to keep on killing, you have to create disturbance so that your life may be miserable here, but you will get a lot of beautiful things in the afterlife, in heaven and everything. Versus a religion which would say that okay, meditate, find peace, do some activities through which you can find tranquility, equanimity. I think these are the kind of values which India stands for, or Bharat stands for. Until people don't understand this, we can call it paganism, we can call it idolatry, we can call it polytheism, we can call it pantheism, names and jargons and all, it's not material. What is important is how do we find peace within, how we can grow spiritually. And that is something which is very important. Why are so many gurus and trainings, be it Vipassana meditation, be it other techniques, very popular in US and Europe, in Western world? We see art of living, Sri Sri having so many centers and Westerners coming over there. Why? Because you can't live with so much of agitation within. A religion is worth it if it can help people clear out that agitative issues within it, their own selves. And when that is available, automatically people will drift towards that. You don't have to sell it. It automatically, it's by word of mouth. That is my view, Aditya.
The world is looking for is going towards bankruptcy of ideas, and that's where I think Satology will play a major role, because we have ideas based on Mahabharata and Ramayana. Anybody can get it. Read Mahabharata, Ramayana from Gita Press, get it yourself. And for Americans, I would say learn to read Devanagari, because Devanagari is the most scientific script that you can read for any language. And you can put all the phonetics there in anywhere. India has more than 3,600 languages. Actually, in entire Southeast Asia, Devanagari is a common form of writing script, and which is gradually being replaced by Roman script in Philippines. But if people can read Devanagari, they can put any sound properly on a paper, any sound. And if you can read that, then you can easily read Sanskrit Shastra based in Mahabharata, Ramayana, and other Shastra. But so again, a script has also been imposed on us. We are speaking English language thanks to the British, and script has been imposed on us. The language, the metric system, imperial system, the calculation mechanisms, like to what extent we are burdened by all those things, but somehow we have survived parallelly. Now it's time for exporting them, because these are the things which will make world a better place. So what do you have to say how we can export? So not only we have to become Atmanirbhar Bharat, but we also have to make the world Vishwa Saksham Bharat. We need to make people qualified from Bharat. What do you have to say on that? And then we'll end the show this one.
I think values will keep on flowing. See, how could values spread so easily without soul, without intimidation? It is when people start understanding. The soft power is created out of that. Yesterday, the world celebrated World Yoga Day. Did we have to spread yoga using a sword? No. People have themselves got attracted. Rather, US has more yoga teachers, and yoga would be a larger business in US than in India, in dollar terms or in terms of the industry size than India. India people would be teaching yoga free to many people. There would be many people who would be charging something which is next to nothing. Whereas in US, it would be a multi-billion-dollar industry. How did it happen even without government coming in? When did Yoga Day get announced? It was after Prime Minister Modi came into power. But why did yoga become successful and so popular in Europe and US even before Prime Minister Modi got elected as the Chief Minister of Gujarat or probably entered into politics? Because there is a series of things that we are doing. People come here, they get attracted, they try to understand what is happening, and then they carry it back. That is what is happening. We don't have to sell. See, the best cars, Rolls Royce, does it come out with an advertisement? No. People go themselves and place an order. The same thing is happening over a period of time. I believe that all the nuances or the contours of Indic civilization, be it the diet, be it medicines, that is Ayurveda, be it health related issues, be sciences, be it social sciences, be it the logic of the science of logic and debating, that is Mimamsa and Tarka Shastra. All those things are going to grow over a period of time. The Indic economics, that is the Artha Shastra, will also get prominence, because in a world where there is a huge disparity amongst people, that some countries are extremely rich whereas some countries are extremely poor. And why are they extremely poor? Because they are stripped of their natural resources. What happens? We need Arthashastra over here. We need Chanakya over here, so that we can ensure that those poor countries can also create wealth. At the same time, innovation is something we really need to work on. India needs to work on. US has actually done an excellent job over there. Europe has done an excellent job, Western Europe, in terms of creating so many technologies, innovation, products. India will have to work, and probably going forward, even Sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America will have to work on that. That is a gray area for everyone. But at least if they have technology, they will earn out of technology. Those who have resources will earn out of natural resources. And where there are more people, they will earn out of labor instead of people having to move to some other country for an employment. That is my view, Radhika.
In one of the future videos, we'll discuss the fallacy of jobs reports, because how unemployment is particularly a big challenge for political leaders, and the solution is coming from Arthashastra itself, how to remove unemployment. But anyway, thank you so much for joining the show and coming on board and discussing so freely. And for viewers, I can tell you that all our shows are unscripted and we don't prepare. We are having fun while discussing it, and Sumit ji himself knows many topics. And watch out for his new book on cows. So I did, sorry to announce it without your permission, but I did that.
Thank you, Aditya ji. Thank you for inviting me in this show. Thank you very much.
Namaste.